Hey, how you guys doing? This is KLA Cloud the Wanderer. I usually have like female athletes or other people, but this one is, I would say, a legend if I could say. He's a photographer. He was a musician. Um, he did some acting. So and for those who don't know, I'm talking to Bill Dobbins. Um, yeah. So how you doing, sir?
So far, so good. The country's having a heat wave, and where I live at the beach is very cool.
You in California? You in Los Angeles?
Yeah, Marina Del Rey.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I'm in New York City.
I, my parents
Yeah.
are from New York. I know it well.
Uh, how's the weather treating you so far? Exhausted?
How's the what?
How's the weather treating you
It's
so
actually
far?
pretty chilly, but
Yeah.
if I go a few miles from here, it's 100 degrees. California has a
Oh,
strange climate.
oh, okay. Yeah. 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 I don't know. I mean, I don't know where to begin.
Well, do you want
You
me to
know.
introduce myself?
Yeah, you can introduce yourself. That'd be good.
All right. Well, I moved to California in the 1970s, and I ended up living in a house that was four doors down from the original Gold's Gym. And this was just at the time when pumping iron came out. So I would look out in the street and I would say, hey, those are the guys from pumping iron. It was just right place, right time. Uh, so I, I was getting older and I wanted to get in shape. So I decided to join the gym, not realizing what it was. So here I was in the world's number one bodybuilding gym, and I was the only pencil neck in the place. But because I worked for radio and I had done various kinds of production, I started working with the owner, and I helped him to create a Mr. America contest, which was huge. And I wrote a program for that. Excuse me, wrote and photographed a program that got me to the attention of Joe Weider. He hired me to write for him. I ended up being the founding editor of Flex magazine, writing and doing photography, and then later doing video. And so I got plugged into the whole industry sort of by accident.
Hmm. Yeah, back in the days, you know, I would I would, take I would buy the Flex magazines and, like, look at the women and stuff like that. I wanted to work out also, like in the 90s. I started like paying attention to bodybuilding, like in the 90s. I didn't know a whole lot, but, and just seeing like the women, it kind of blew my mind and stuff, and then even the men. I wanted to look. Matter of fact, I had like a Joe Weider products. He had the shakes and stuff like that, and I used to buy them. This was when I was about like 16. So
Well, what happened was that women's bodybuilding came along just about that time, the late 70s.
yeah,
Uh, and Joe Weider was very sympathetic to it. Not everybody was, but he could see in it a way of promoting his magazines. He could see in Rachel McClish a way to promote a champion the way he promoted Arnold.
right,
So when I was doing Flex magazine, he was perfectly happy to have me photograph and do articles on women like Rachel. So so as the and he did it in muscle and fitness too.
right,
So as the magazines developed in the 80s, they included the women. There was no resistance. There was resistance in the culture. There was resistance even in the federations. Women ran into resistance in their own families with their husbands, boyfriends, and parents, but they didn't run into any resistance from Joe Weider. And
Right.
so we were able to get all these women in the magazines and promote them right from the beginning. And that was a big benefit to the women.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I remember also, you was in Geraldo, and you and the other female bodybuilders, you had like a discussion and stuff about your magazine. Well,
That's
the really that special edition of where all the
yeah. That
when I
that that Geraldo is on YouTube if you look for it.
yeah
Uh,
yeah
2 parts. No, that's I did in 1995. I did a book called "The Women: Photographs of the Top Female
yeah
Bodybuilder,"
right
and I was there with Linda Murray and Sharon Burnett and a whole bunch of women at the Geraldo show to promote the book. And it was his, uh, he had the biggest audience for that summer for that show.
right
And it was a huge success. Sold a lot of books,
yeah
but it is,
yeah
if you look it up on YouTube, it's there in two
yeah
parts.
yeah. I seen the when it came out. I remember I seen the talk show. I forgot about it, but I remember the book. It's because I was at Barnes and Nobles at the time, and this came out like in '96. And I was flipping through the pages, and I was like, wow. That's like, I think that's the first time I actually seen like exoticness of a female bodybuilder, because I didn't really see it too much, you know. So and then I started, looking at it. I was like, wow, that looked nice.
Well, remember, we're
So
talking pre-internet days, so it was relatively difficult to get certain kinds of information and images.
yeah,
You could click on your computer and type in female bodybuilders. So there were a couple of other books done around that time on female bodybuilding, but none of them were particularly successful. Some
right,
were interesting, but they didn't. But I mean, I sold 45,000 books that in that 2 year period, which is the second largest sales of an art book during that period. There was a photographer named Herb Ritz who did a book on Africa, and that sold more than my book did. But he was a very big name photographer. Uh, so it was really a phenomenal success, considering it was a off the wall subject most people didn't know anything about, and of course, not that many people are interested in it, even if they know about it.
right, right. That's true. Like, cause I I would say that I was that curiosity, for some reason. I was wanted to work out and stuff, and you know, and you also did like stuff with male bodybuilders also too, like with Frank
Or,
Zane, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
no, of course, I worked for Muscle and Fitness and Flex, and so I covered the men too. I
Yeah.
just I was the first one to also focus on the women.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
no, I've written 3 books with Arnold, including the 2 versions of the encyclopedia,
Mm.
and
Oh,
I photographed uh, Arnold and Frank Zane and Franco Colombo and all of the guys from the '80s.
yeah. Yeah. What was it about the women that I would say that you wanted to more with work more with than the men?
Well, photography has been around since about 1839, uh, and almost everything that's could be photographed has been photographed. It's very difficult to find a new subject. It's like if you're an explorer, you can't find a new continent. You might find a new valley. You might find a new jungle. But here suddenly you had this new kind of body, which had never been seen before, never existed before. The aesthetic development of the female bodybuilding, developing muscles for aesthetic purposes. So suddenly there's this brand new subject where any photography you do on it is new because it's never been done before.
Right.
So I could go back and do all kinds of photography, styles of photography, art photography, glamour, fashion, whatever, that had been done before. And it's new because the bodies are new. So to have the opportunity, in effect, to discover a whole new subject is pretty special. And I recognized it and jumped on it.
Mm. Like couple of years back, I would say, I kind of discovered that, they had women with muscles like in the 1900s and stuff, but they were like circus freaks. Like,
Well, they're strong men normally.
yeah, the strong man, yeah, the strong man.
And that was a thing. They were performers. They were strong men. They would do one arm dumbbell lifts and things like that. And that some of them had pretty good physiques, but it wasn't
Right.
really until into the 1950s that bodybuilders learned to train more or less the way they do now, where training only part of the body each time, split system training, where specific, alternating, one joint specific movements like curls with big whole body movements, two joint movements. So if you know, they give out in the Olympia, they give out the Sandow trophy. And Sandow was one of those guys from the 1900s. And he was the first one that I know of who not only was a guy who showed off how strong he was, but did posing exhibitions where he would
Okay.
get in shape and he would flex his muscles and pose for people, not lifting weights, but just flexing. So that was really the start of bodybuilding, the posing exhibitions.
Oh, okay. Okay. You got all the rage, George Page, Mr. Dobbins. You are truly a legend.
Well,
Yeah.
I always ask when people say you're a legend, I ask, what does that pay?
I say that because I don't know. I guess
You stand by.
because
Will it get me a double latte at Starbucks?
yeah. I mean, you can. I mean, because you got a resume with you, man. You worked with legends. You worked with Arnold Schwarzenegger. You worked with Frank
I know.
Zane. You worked with Linda Murray. Eh,
Very fortunate in that I'm working with Jake Wood now. You know who Jake Wood is?
I've heard of him. I've heard of him through All the Rage George Page.
Jake Wood is a businessman who's always been himself a bodybuilder, not a competitive bodybuilder, but he's a big muscular guy. And he inherited a very big company. And he
Mm,
bought the Weider magazines, Muscle and Fitness and Flex and Muscle and Fitness Hers. He bought the Olympia. He owns the Olympia.
yeah,
And he stages a whole series of contests across the country and in Europe. And his company is called Wings of Strength.
yeah.
And he hired me to work for the magazines, sort of deja vu, back to where things I used to do. And fortunately, that has kept me having an income so that I'm able to continue photographing and writing articles and being in the business
Mm,
because there are very, very few sources of income. Now, there are some, like Robbie Robinson, Robbie Robinson, who's a legend. He has some new sponsors, and they've been hiring me to do work with Robbie. And so things like that happen every once in a while, but not enough for me to depend on it for a full-time living. So I'm very
mm,
happy to be associated with Jake Wood, and he is a savior of female bodybuilding, uh, and a huge influence on the competitive bodybuilding world in general, uh, and the new Joe Weider.
mm. Yeah, yeah. I stopped. Tell you the truth, I stopped kind of looking. I don't know. Like I don't really. I don't see like the bodybuilder publications like in newsstands like I did before. I
Well, it's
probably
not,
see Flex,
they're not there
huh?
anymore online.
Yeah, yeah. And that's
They're,
what now go ahead.
no, they're still there. They're online now. I've been talking to Jake
Right.
about creating an online version of the magazine that looks like a magazine. It's got cover, you turn pages, and there are pieces of software that'll do that. The thing is that he's only been in this for a few years, and he has done so much. I mean, he not only bought the Olympia, but then moved it from Vegas to Orlando during the pandemic, and then moved it back to Vegas. He's got a whole string of contests he does all across the country: the New York Pro, the Chicago Pro. Uh, uh, you know, I don't know how many. He does one in Romania. Uh, he's just got so much on his plate. It's hard to get him to focus on another area. So I I do think we miss having magazines that look like magazines, where you turn pages and where you have covers and who's on the cover. Um, and I'm hoping that Muscle Fitness and Flex will institute that sometime in the future, but it's all up in the air right at the moment. However, if you go to musclefitness.com, uh, we do have working magazines, and uh, I just um, I just did an article on Tony Pearson. I'm doing one
Yeah.
on Robinson. I'm doing one on Muscle Beach, because uh, Muscle Beach is still functioning here in Venice. Uh, so I've done, I don't know, 30, 40 articles in the last year or two. Uh,
Yeah.
so so that
I could
so that
no, not go ahead. I was thinking about showing the viewers your work and stuff. Several let me post that up.
in Brno.
Yeah. What's it like working with her?
Sharon is a sweetheart, one of my best friends. She and Linda
Yeah,
Murray
I could see that.
are close friends.
Yeah. You also do stuff besides bodybuilding. You do like I seen one picture you do you still work out?
I do. I haven't been in the last couple of weeks because I hurt my shoulder. And
Oh, okay.
get older and you hurt yourself, you have to rest. You can't go work through it. It'll just get worse.
Right,
But
right.
no, I still go. That picture is interesting. You have to be careful with that, because there's like a 40 or 50-foot drop right behind her.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's a lot of times when I'm directing women and I'm out in the desert in the mountains, and I can't
Right,
see what's behind them, and I'm directing them, and I have to say, do this if it's safe,
right,
because otherwise I could lose a model.
right. Oh, yeah,
This was a promo for my first book, The Women. All
yeah.
these ladies are in The Women, and that was at a press uh, event,
Hmm.
and that
Oh, you the little Farango. The Hope.
again, that was done long time ago, for Muscle and Fitness.
Oh, okay.
That's the cover of my second photo book, Modern Amazons. which was done by a company called Taschen. As you see, it says Taschen,
Yeah.
which is one of the major art book companies in the whole world.
Yeah.
So they didn't pay me a lot of money for it, but it's a huge prestige item to have a book by Taschen.
Yeah. I mean, you got like, I mean, like you have like a resume. You a musician too. Like,
Well, that
I
was
remember you.
when I was about 12 years old. I got into both photography and music,
Yeah.
and I I was way back in the day a folk singer. Back in the Bob Dylan days,
Yeah.
and played a lot of the same clubs that he did, but I was a couple of
Mm,
years behind him. And then the industry switched over to songwriting, singer songwriters,
right.
and I switched over to that. But I was a little bit behind the curve. By the time Springsteen came along, I was just a little behind the curve,
Mm,
and I moved out to California, and that's when uh, I started helping Gold's Gym with promotion and publicity, showcasing my photography. And Joe Weider got me working for him, and he paid photographers a lot more than he paid writers.
mm,
So I said, well, I'm a photographer and I needed the money. So, along with getting paid for articles, I started doing photography. And I was only able to do sort of black and white documentary photography, street photography, because that's all I'd ever done. And I had to learn to do color and learn to do studio lighting and everything. And it took a couple of years before I really got professional at those things. But
right.
fortunately, because I was the editor of the magazine, I could assign myself whatever I needed to. I didn't have to wait for an art director to tell me. So I could get myself into the industry, sort of working for myself. And Joe was always very supportive. And uh, I tell you, I did have, like in the early 80s, when I realized how much I was focusing on the bodybuilding world, when I did other things. I mean, like you say, if you look at my photography in general, I've done everything. I've done everything but food photography and porno. I've done uh, every other kind of photography, and I saw myself getting sucked into this bodybuilding world, and who knew how big it was going to get. And I could just
yeah.
see myself being stranded after 10 years in it with no career because there was nowhere to go. I didn't know how far there would be to go. So I looked out that way. I took a chance on there being some future in bodybuilding. It turned out there was.
What's your thoughts about these women like they do this sport but they don't get paid enough? Like, how do you feel about that? Like,
Well, they're getting paid better now.
right.
Jake Wood makes sure that they get paid pretty well. He not only puts up the prize money for their contests, but he pays them to do photo shoots. Like if he calls me up and he says, I want a photo shoot with uh, whoever, uh, he pays them for that photo shoot. Uh, what happened is in the 80s, no, in the 90s, really, there was a promoter who was not only promoting the Mr. and Miss Olympia, but was also in charge of professional bodybuilding for the IFBB. Real conflict of interest. And he had been promoting the Miss Olympia, and then they gave it to somebody else. So he was the guy who was directing advertisers to the contests. So they would come to him and they'd say, we have some money for the Olympia. And he'd say, well, put it in the Mr. Olympia, not in the Miss Olympia. And all of a sudden the money started to dry up. And
Mm,
because he could say, look, there's no money being put into the Miss Olympia, therefore we're going to cut back on the prize money. So it was like the snowballing effect.
Yeah.
And then he got away with it. And once he got away with it and nobody protested, then he said, fine, we're going to give hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to the men, and we're going to give a few $1,000s to the women.
Mm.
And he, like I say, it was based on economics, but it was an economic situation he helped to create. Because in sport in general, you get an athlete gets paid according to how much revenue they generate. Okay, so if you have a real football or basketball star, they generate a tremendous amount of revenue to the sport, and therefore you can afford to pay them a lot.
Mm.
Tiger Woods made so much money for other golfers. He brought so much money into the sport that that he raised revenue for everybody. He raised prize money. He raised the amount of money they made in advertising. He raised the amount of money they made selling merchandise. So in effect, he created more revenue and therefore he got paid more.
Right.
Bodybuilding for women didn't work that way because of the structure of the authorities in the 90s, and the women kind of got screwed. But they're doing a lot better now.
Because I hear, some women, sometimes I interview women and, other people like All the Rage George Page, they interview and some of them, they have to promote themselves. And, they do get paid, doing photography, but a lot of, from what I hear, it's like, well, it's not a high paying sport or anything. And,
But
yeah, go
you're
ahead.
talking
Go ahead.
somebody like Andrea Shaw, just won what 3 Miss Olympias.
Yeah.
She's inundated with offers, guest posing, endorsements. When
Yeah.
you when you're really successful, you get a lot of opportunities that you don't have when you're just somebody with muscles. And a lot of the women you talk to are not stars.
Right.
They
Yeah.
they may be very impressive and they may be admirable, but but they it comes to me all the time. People say to me, well, all the women, what about so and so? I go, never heard of her,
Mm.
because there's so many thousands of them now, especially now that you have all the uh, physique and figure women, and now wellness and all of that. You just have so many thousands of women that there isn't enough money to go around.
Mm.
I just posted on I think it was Muscle and Fitness Hers, an article by a fitness competitor about how to make money. That I love that picture. That
Yeah.
picture.
I like that one too. I
Of
don't want to lose you what you're saying. Go ahead. I just showing a little bit of pictures. Go ahead.
I call that's really California Golden Girl. That really
Yeah.
sums up the whole history of California sunshine and bodybuilding.
Mm.
Uh, it's a really iconic shot.
Yeah. What's her name? I don't know who this
She,
is.
she's Ukrainian. She,
Oh,
she's a,
okay.
she's one of the good Ukrainians.
Yeah,
Now
she's beautiful.
she came out here. She could hardly speak English when she got here, uh, and she did very well in competition, and then ended up marrying some promoter and moved to Alaska and is still there. But I got huge number of good pictures of Valentina.
Yeah, okay. Like back to what you were saying. You said that because it's different divisions and
Well,
it's
here's
not
almost all the top women can make money personal training, especially if they're spread out around the country. Because if you're in Des Moines or somewhere, even Las Vegas, there's relatively few really well developed people who can teach. Now that doesn't pay a fortune, but it's a living. You can make money at that. You can make money doing that. You can make money guest posing sometimes. A lot of women own gyms. Linda Murray owned a gym for a long time.
Right.
So you can sell videos, sell anyways. There's all the things that you can do, but very few times are people going to come to you and give you money. Now, like I say, Robbie Robinson just got 2 new sponsors, and he's got somebody in India, of all places, who wants to sponsor him. But of course, he's been around a long time, and he's really unique. I mean, you get a guy who's got a physique like that and is 77 years old. And I've just photographed him recently and done videos with him. And he's unique. But there have been long times in his career in which he's had trouble making money. You really have to hustle. You have to try every different thing.
You got some comments.
Including a day job. I mean, including driving for Uber.
Yeah. You got Rolando G, Mr. Dobbins. I hate when people give these ladies a pass when they go adult because there are other ways to make money.
Well, I'll tell you, a very small percentage of female bodybuilders have done porn.
Right.
I've done a lot of nudes with them, but they're not porn. They're stuff designed to go in an art gallery.
Right.
And you'll see that in my books. Every once in a while, I go online and I run across a female bodybuilder doing porn that I didn't know was doing porn. There's more than I know about, but they're a fairly conservative bunch. An awful lot of them won't even do artistic nudes. However, in this world, women at all levels frequently find themselves in a position in which they have to exploit their sexuality. They have to be strippers or something in order to make a living. You go up to Canada, for example, where they have a very robust stripping industry, much more it's more respectable than in the U.S. And these girls really are, university students and nurses and like that, and doing this on the side because it's just more acceptable in Canada. I mean, to the point where I know women who were in Detroit who would go across the border to Canada and do stripping, but they wouldn't do it in the U.S. because it was too sleazy.
Yeah.
But anyway, the way the world is, that there women and men in some cases are going to be exploited when they don't have much other choices. And it's the nature of there's a list of male bodybuilders who have done outcall wrestling and done some kinds of porno over the decades that you might not know about for the same reasons. But again, relatively few.
Yeah. He also says, wow, good breakdown, Mr. Dobbins. He says, Mr. Dobbins, did you ever work with the legends, Miss Corey Everson?
Yeah, I just saw her the other day, by the way. Muscle Beach had an event and had invited her to a breakfast, and she was there. And she still looks great, and her sister, Kat, looks great. I didn't work as much with Corey as I have. There's an awful lot of stuff I've done with her that's in the Weider library somewhere I don't even have access to. But Corey had her own ideas about what kind of photos to do, And she had one or two photographers who did kind of cheesecake illustration photos, I would call them. They were very commercial looking. And they look very dated now, I think. But she primarily wanted to work with them, and I only shot her a few times, which is too bad. I would love to have shot her more. Of course, I was a big fan.
I remember her in the movies, and it was a document. Somebody was kind of discussing about why you don't see female bodybuilders like in movies and stuff. And she and Rachel McLish, they were like the ones that stood out. I remember Corey and what's the name of that with Jean Claude Van Damme, Double Impact. Yeah, she was sexy in that movie. And I remember the legend of Hercules, and yeah, and then you didn't really see her no more. And
Well,
then
Corey had a TV show, a regular daily TV show, which was quite successful. And then she
yeah,
did a couple of movies, but in that, like the Jean-Claude movie, they had her, um, they had her lean down. They wanted her to lose real muscularity, which I think is a
okay,
mistake. Imagine if you could look, when you look back on Pumping Iron now, you see Arnold at his best.
right,
You you don't see Corey at her best, um, but she looks good.
yeah,
But again, and with Rachel, Rachel married a film producer, so she made several movies that he produced,
mm,
um, and they were okay, uh, but they were not really A movies. The
right,
Jean Claude movie was much more expensive than the movies that Rachel made. But again, it's economics. You can't put a lot of money into a movie that's not going to make a lot of money.
right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember, just seeing her and Linda Murray, they stood out for me because, you would see Linda Murray in the cover of Muscle Fitness sometime at times and Flex
Well,
or
Linda
another
has
publication.
Linda has had, in effect, the best career. The reason is she won 8 Miss Olympias,
Yeah,
and then she stayed associated with the sport. She is now working for Jake Wood. She's one of his executives, helping to do Wings of Strength. She promotes 3 contests herself. In fact, she has one coming up in Atlanta almost as we speak. Uh,
mm,
so she stayed in as an executive. She stayed in as a promoter, and has given back to the sport.
right,
Uh, whereas everybody else, Corey and Rachel, uh, all these people kind of dropped out of the sport, and are not continuing. Arnold stayed in sport. He kept the Columbus shows going. Um, and I can remember long after he was already a movie star, in his original office, you would go there and there would be these stacks of T-shirts and booklets and stuff that he was continuing to sell. His idea was, well, he had this profit center, keep on with it. It was only
yeah,
when he started to be so successful that it was kind of a waste of his time and effort to make a few dollars with these things that he dropped it. But he kept it up for a long time. And of course,
yeah.
he's continued with Columbus. So
You ever thought you? Oh, go ahead. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
not everybody stays in the sport.
Yeah,
Linda Murray did and Arnold did, and I give them credit for that.
yeah. You ever thought about doing like cinematography at one point since you was a photographer, or like would work doing like something with female bodybuilders or anything? Because you don't really see them. Like they don't stand out as they did like in the 80s and 90s.
Again, if you go online uh, and you look up the Weeder system videos,
Okay.
okay, uh, excuse me,
Bless
the
you.
Weeder videos. Joe Weeder had a company called Weeder Video, and I was the president of it. And we did a 10-volume set of training videos with both men and women. Joe spent $1 million on it. It would have cost more,
I
but
think I remember that.
he had all these people under contract already, so he didn't have to pay the bodybuilders. They were already paid.
Yeah.
He spent $1 million just on production. And they're still, you can still see them on YouTube, or at least you can see promotions of them. So that was my main contribution in terms of video. I do shoot video. In fact, talking about Robbie Robinson, he has a new website called strongerthanme.org, which his sponsors have created. And I just did a video intro for that with him. And in 2 weeks, I'm going to start a whole video series to go on that website. My problem of not doing more is that there's been nobody to pay for it.
Mm.
That is, people have paid me to do still photography. Jake pays me to do articles on photography, but not to do video. The Robbie people are paying me to do video, so I'm doing that.
Yeah. I always wanted to do photography and stuff. I remember I took like a digital photography class, but it was a free course and stuff like that. I just seeing like, want to work with women and stuff like that. Because I remember I talked to another photographer. He kind of was influenced by it. Like he wasn't a photographer until he would go to the shows and kind of like do photography. And this was like years back. Yeah. So
Well, the barrier to being a photographer has practically disappeared, which is why it's
mm,
so hard to be a professional photographer, because people can do with an iPhone what you used to need tens of thousands of equipment to do.
yeah,
Uh, and when you're shooting digitally, see, you've heard the saying that you need 10,000 hours at something in order to be a master of it. Well,
yeah,
back when I was learning photography, you had to pay for not only equipment, but film and processing. And I can remember going to a store in LA before, say, the Arnold or the Olympia, and buying $1,000 worth of film. And all that film had to be processed, but Weeder was paying for it. I was okay. But next to me would be a student at Santa Monica College who was taking photography, and he'd be buying 3 rolls for the week, 3 rolls of 36 exposures. And that's all he could shoot for the week.
mm,
Nowadays, with digital, he could shoot 3,000 pictures for the week, get more and more practice, and get to see his results right away, where he shoots and looks and put it on the computer and doesn't have to wait for it to come back from processing, doesn't have to wait to have prints made. So you can get a huge amount of experience just in a few months. And so if you have any ability for it, and you have to have that, same as you have to have ability for music or anything, but if you
right,
have any ability for that, you can make tremendous progress very, very quickly. And you can do it with an iPhone. You can do it with a Canon Rebel for $900. And then what you need is a computer, and you need hard drives in order to store your images, and you need some sort of processing software, like Photoshop or Lightroom or something.
yeah,
And once you have all of those things, then your main problem becomes, again, storing this digital images, because you can't see, but I am surrounded in here by file cabinets full of film photos that will last for 1,000 years,
mm,
especially when locked away like that and not under light. But I also have underneath here, I have terabytes worth of uh, digital images. And if anything, if I don't back them up or something happens, they can all go away. Just one electronic glitch. But getting into photography, if anyone wants to be a photographer, uh, they can practice, shoot photos over and over and over again. And there's plenty of online instruction about how to be a photographer.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah,
And
yeah,
people tell me, how do I get to shoot women bodybuilders?
yeah.
And
I know that's a time.
I say, go to contests and try and shoot any of them. Then develop a portfolio. Then when you go back to another contest, say, look, here's what I do. Can I shoot you? Because they all want pictures, but they get hit on by people who really aren't any good.
Right.
But if you show them something, it doesn't even have to be a female bodybuilder. Just get to the point where you're shooting really good shots, develop a portfolio. It can be an online portfolio. It can be on an iPad. And say, here's what I do. Would you like to shoot with me? And then say, I will give you copies of every photo we do.
Yeah. I mean,
And
I took pictures. No, I'm sorry. I just say a little something. I took pictures of like rivers and stuff like that, and trees and stuff. Is that okay?
no,
Like landscape?
you got to shoot people if you're going to get to
Yeah,
shoot.
but it's not easy. I mean, trying to find somebody, like it really ain't too easy. Because I'm in New York City, and I think I think when the pandemic happened, I would ask people, but then it kind of like people would kind of be uncomfortable, so I had to fall back a little bit with it. I remember I took I
You always approach people with pictures. That is, do you have an iPad with your pictures on it?
um I have some pictures, but
Can you walk up to someone with an iPad and say, here's what I do? Here, look at that, look at that, look at that, look at that. You need a portfolio, and it can be electronic.
okay. I have a tablet with me. I have a tablet and stuff.
Okay, well, here's one of these things that, like what you're doing now, just the technology of this online interview is beyond most people. They wouldn't know how to do it.
Right.
Okay, so you can do difficult things. You just have to turn your talents to doing this. If you want to be a photographer, develop a portfolio online, and the the I mean, women hang out in malls, hang out in restaurants, and all you need to do is have a couple of pictures of women and some other good pictures. Say, excuse me, I'm so and so. I'm a photographer looking to expand my portfolio. Here's what I do. Would you be interested in doing some photos? I will give you copies of all the photos we do.
Okay.
Now, you do that to 20 women, and 8 of them are going to say yes. What kind of a camera do you use?
I need to get a camera also. So
Well, yeah, well, if you want to be a photographer.
yeah.
Now, like I say, I don't know all the different makes and models, but I know that the entry level Canon, the Rebel, which only costs $900, is good enough for what we're talking about. You can earn a living with that camera,
Right.
and so you shoot, and you get pictures on a card. You need card reader. What kind of software do you use on your computer?
I mostly do with the iPhone. See, I have a computer, but it's kind of slow. And I was thinking about getting another computer. I use the computer to charge my headphones
Okay, well, I don't
currently.
understand. I don't know what your budgets are. I don't know if you make a lot of money or you're
No, I
starving.
don't. I don't. I don't make a lot of money. I work, but I don't make a lot of money.
Thing is that with digital photography, there are initial investments, but then you don't have to pay for film and processing. So those initial investments are most of what you have to pay for. So what you need is some kind of camera. Even if you're shooting on an iPhone, you need a computer. You need a backup drive so that you have actually what you need is two backup drives. You put your photos on one and then you back them up onto a second one.
Okay.
And hard drives are relatively cheap nowadays. You can get terabyte drives for a few $100s. You need some sort of processing software. The industry standard is Adobe, Photoshop, and Lightroom,
Yeah.
which are relatively expensive. But what Adobe does is it's a thing where you subscribe. But there are other ones that you can just buy.
I actually see, I do like animations. Well, I try to do animation. I've used Adobe Photoshop, and I know how to use After Effects a bit. I stopped doing After Effects for a little bit, but I
What
was kind of like doing like animation and stuff like that also. So,
After Effects is one of that group of. So you know what it is.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
for what you're doing, you basically want Lightroom because it
yeah.
allows you to catalog your
Right.
photos and to do basic processing on them. Won't do what Photoshop does, but it does an awful lot.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm saying you get you shoot pictures either with your iPhone and then put them on your computer, or a entry level uh, DSLR like the Canon Rebel or something like it.
yeah.
You put your stuff on the computer. You have some way of storing it. You have some way of processing it. Create a portfolio, and then put it on some sort of tablet where you go, here's what I do,
Mm.
and then go out and if you can't find female bodybuilders, well, uh, what gyms do you go to?
I mean, I don't go to the gym. I mean, but I go to the park and I do see like fit women at times, or sometimes I'll like see women that's like around outside the park and stuff like that.
Fine, but you need a portfolio to show them. And
Yeah,
the absolute best way is to have a woman go with you, have a
right.
girlfriend or friend, because if you walk up to a girl and you have a girl with you,
Yeah, it'd be convincing.
much safer. Do you
Yeah,
have a
I don't. I'm really. I don't have like a female friend or like that.
card?
Maybe I could come up with cards right now, but I have to figure it out myself.
Okay, but the stuff I'm telling you is very basic. I had this
Right.
sort of discussion with a aspiring filmmaker last night, where I kept saying, "Well, it's this and that and the other thing," and I'm going, he's going, "Oh yeah, that's." I said, "Yeah, it's this and this and this and this, and those are the basic things you do, no matter who you are."
Okay.
Okay, so anyway, um, there is a LinkedIn has a uh, has a category called LinkedIn Learning.
Okay.
LinkedIn Learning, you have to subscribe to it, but it has tutorials on everything. Tutorials on anything you can think of. So you pay one fee, you pay by the month or by the year, and you can just go to school, go to university. And it's got anything you could imagine on there. Certainly everything we're talking about.
Yeah.
But
All
the
right.
basic
No
is
problem.
you shoot a lot of photos.
Yeah, I got you.
And by the way,
More.
uh, cameras are so cheap nowadays that if you go on buy them used on Craigslist or something, you can really,
Yeah.
for a couple $100, you can get a very, very serviceable camera. You don't need anything fancy because you're just creating basic images, but you're
Yeah.
creating a card that you can stick the card in the computer, with a card reader. And you can do all this on an iPhone. It's just that it's a little clunkier. You have to really practice to be able to do it on an iPhone,
Yeah.
but you can do it on
Well,
an iPhone.
yeah. Let me read some of these comments a little bit. I don't know, Rolando. Yeah, Rita West is very. I don't know.
I don't know who that is.
You never heard of Rita West? She's a
No,
bodybuilder, but she been bodybuilding for like I would say 2 years now, a few years. She was a power lifter, and I was talking with her like months ago. Yeah,
remember,
and she
I only know people usually who rise right up to the top where
right,
they're competing in a wings of strength contest or somebody asked me to photograph them. So back in the day, back in the 80s, I knew everybody, but there
right,
were for far fewer women to know.
yeah.
So I don't know her.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not mad at you because there's a lot of women that I don't even know. But this person that I'm gonna bring you, he knows a lot. Oh Lord, have mercy. This man, he knows a lot of female bodybuilders.
I only know just a few, but it is a pleasure to meet you, Mr.
Yeah, yeah,
Dobbins.
okay,
Okay, and it's a pleasure to meet you. For years, I've followed your content, your material. I mean, you have worked with some great women over your career, and you put out some great stuff. And I mean, it's just a pleasure to be here with you and just to listen to you and share your stories. As someone who's been in this game as long as you have, what is your feelings and thought of how the sport has changed from the levels of the Arnold Schwarzeneggers, the Lou Ferrignos, the Richard McLeod's, the Corey Evensons, to the like the Chris Bumsteads and Big Ramis and Andrea Shaws and all the others?
An awful lot of ground there. As far as men's bodybuilding is concerned, and I had this discussion with Sean Ray the other day, because you go right from 212 to unlimited, there are guys competing in the Open Olympia who started in 212 and then now 270. That's not muscle. You can't build that much muscle. Um, I think both in men's and women's bodybuilding, there ought to be intermediary weight classes um, that where they have physique. It ought to be lightweight or middleweight bodybuilding. In 2000, I got them to start a lightweight female bodybuilding, pro bodybuilding class because they were complaining that the women were getting too big. And so when you had a lightweight class, which was 130 or 35, something like that, you suddenly had Juliette Bergman come back into the sport and win. You had Kathy LaFrancoise come in and win. You had Andrula Blanchette come in and win. So you had this group of women who were muscular but very aesthetic, and nobody could accuse of being too big. And with the men, they have this physique instead of lightweight bodybuilding. The problem with any class but bodybuilding is a kind of beauty contest. Specialized, and the competitors have to be terrific athletes. But if you look like women in figure, they're not being judged by a standard that's in any way objective. I go to a figure contest and say in the pros, and I can almost never pick out even the top 5, much less the winner. I don't know what the judges are looking at. But I go to a bodybuilding show and I can say who I think should win and come pretty close. And if you have, in effect, beauty contests, I don't say that disparagingly. I'm only saying that to differentiate it from something in which you've got a set of standards which you can describe, which are pretty fixed. So with physique, it should be lightweight bodybuilding. And with men's bodybuilding, these guys are just too big. They're so big and thick that they're just not very interesting looking. They're all the Incredible Hulk, which is not to say they're not enormously impressive. I mean, Big Ramy, you stand next to Big Ramy or some of these other guys. But then you look at, a Sean Ray from the past, or even Ronnie Coleman. Ronnie Coleman was big, especially at the beginning of his pro career, before he thickened up. And he was huge. I would stand next to him and his arm would do this. And I go, Jesus Christ. It's the shape of it, not the size of it, but just the shape. And then he started gaining size. And this was again back in the 90s when, as I say, it was being run by people who let it get out of control. Like, for example, you notice in the so-called standing relaxed, everybody twists around to the side.
Mm-hmm.
That's the rules. But in the 90s, people started doing it, and the authorities let them get away with it. You're supposed to stand like at attention in 4 directions. You're not supposed to twist. You're not supposed to flex your arm. You're just supposed to stand there and say, this is what my symmetry, this is what it looks like, and then turn 3 different ways. Well, how can you judge someone's symmetry? They're twisting and flexing and leaning. We got to the point where a bodybuilder like Dillette, he would do the standing relaxed thing for 4 sides, and he was exhausted. We go, flexing so hard, and Paul wasn't in that kind of shape. And the authorities, the IFBB, should have said, stop that. That's not what that pose is supposed to be about. It's not what that class is supposed to be about. Just stand there from 4 directions or get the fuck off the stage. And they didn't do it. As a result, that posing is totally corrupted. It means nothing.
Yeah. I had a conversation, interview with another lady. She's an IFB pro, and she talked about how even the physique girls are doing the most muscular pose. Like, they don't have the front lat spread in physique, but you see girls doing the pose, even doing their routines where you're supposed to, because, instead again, physique is supposed to be the new version of women's bodybuilding. But now, if you look at it, those women are getting a lot more. Like, I know, Natalia Coelho, how she has that decent symmetry when she comes in, nice taper when it comes into the V-taper look, but she's getting larger. And yeah, I remember when they put in the lightweight division, like, that year in 2000 when Valentina and Andrula were the co-champions. To me, I felt like they could have. I felt with that one, I felt they could have went with Andrula, but I think they wanted to go with Valentina, so they just say, let's just split the baby and just go with them both.
Well, the problem again, over the years, starting in 1980, people have been complaining the women are getting too muscular. You look back on some of the women who were roundly criticized for being too muscular, and they couldn't stand on a fitness or figure stage nowadays. I told everybody, I used to be accused of saying that women should look like men. And I said, no, women should look like bodybuilders. They should be judged like bodybuilders. And there's a necessary component to aesthetic component to bodybuilding, or else some football player or pro wrestler would be Mr. Olympia. But what would happen, I said, it's a sliding scale, that what seems to be too much now, 2 years from now will be, oh, remember her, wasn't that a nice aesthetic alternative? That's what people should look like. I said, that's the one you criticized that people shouldn't look like. There's something especially about women. You understand that people don't look at men and women the same way. I mean, that's obvious, but there are specific ways. Women are judged on a basis to a large degree on the femininity, sexual attractiveness, gender identity, all of these things. And women's bodybuilding has challenged every one of those things. In the same way now that the, the movement to have more support for trans is pushing everyone's buttons because it violates all of their preconceptions about gender identity. So this happened in bodybuilding, and this is why Rachel and then Corey were so good for the sport, because they were totally acceptable to the people who thought the women were getting too what do you call it? Thought they were getting too masculine, but how could you call Rachel or Corey too masculine? So they were wonderful sport, but to my mind, everything should be bodybuilding. There should just be different classes of bodybuilding, and it should be judged as bodybuilding, except for, of course, fitness, where the performance is so important.
How do you wish it? I just wanted to ask, like, how do you look at bikini competitors?
It's all right with me.
Okay.
I think the girls look really good, and you know, it's a fit bikini. That is, you're in a bikini, but you got to look fit, but just fit. Now, I really like actually this new wellness division, because a lot of the bikini girls have really had to over diet and overtrain in order to get their body size down, because they're muscular. They got big glutes. And wellness is for bikini competitors with big glutes and legs. And it's more natural. That is, it's more
feminine.
It's more genetically the way women are built. Women are built to have more mass below their waist.
Mm-hmm.
That is, women have only 50% of that. No, we're talking statistically, only 50% of the upper body tissue that a man the same size does, but they got 90% of the lower body muscle tissue. Mm-hmm. Because they have lower center of gravity. They're built to have babies, and you got a woman who's carrying, you know, a couple of pounds of baby around there. They need more weight to balance them below the waist. So a wellness division kind of takes that into consideration.
Like how the bikini division was brought in because it was more feminine, you know, looking. It was more of a.
It's bikini girls who are fit. That's all. Mm-hmm. But mm-hmm. There's no other standard, and therefore, when you have a lineup, the judges can pick whoever they want. Mm-hmm. See, the difference in bodybuilding is the judges try and identify ones. They don't define them. You know, they don't create a set of values and then in bodybuilding and then go say who sets these values. They look at what bodybuilders have achieved and say, see those guys? That's the value. It's Arnold. It's Lee Haney. It's whoever. It's Sean Ray. That's the standard. People who look like that are what you're supposed to look like. And then and of course, it's not absolute. It's always going to be subjective. But in bikini, there is no one you can point to and say, that's how everyone should look. Because the one next to it looks a lot like the same, only a little bit different. And you have 30 women on stage. Who the hell do you pick?
That's how I feel. So at times, I feel that way. Like, kind of differentiate. I'm still learning, so
yeah. It's like me. I do content on women bodybuilding. I do content also on physique and figure. But with bikini and wellness, those women look so much alike. Even though I think since wellness is really popular in Brazil, that's where it came from. And sometimes some women may have those aesthetics. I think compared to, I remember a friend of mine told me how many Brazilian women do well because they have more of those Afro aesthetics. They have the wider hips, the thicker thighs. You know, they're bigger. They have more glute development compared to.
Brazil likes asses.
Yeah, all to say that he said he's an ass man. He's a Brazil special. He said he's an ass man, but you know.
And I tell people all the time, you know what, with all the implants and stuff, I said if you're a breast man, bodybuilding is not for you. If you're an ass man, female bodybuilding is heaven for you, These women have the greatest asses in the world.
And you, sir, during your time, who you think was just the most, as we mentioned, Linda Murray, Corey Everson, but currently you think is the one that just really just, it's just like a standout in the sport right now?
Andrea Shaw.
I gotta go with the man. Yeah, she is.
Yeah, he loves Andrea Shaw.
Jake sent me and Linda Murray to Detroit to be with Andrea Shaw, to photograph her and do videos. And the thing that people don't understand about Andrea is how fucking big she is. She's 180 pounds. She doesn't look it, because Linda, you see pictures of her and pictures of Linda, they don't look different. But Linda was 135 pounds. And Andrea's 100. Her arms are just huge. But she's so aesthetically balanced. She just doesn't look that huge. She doesn't look like a power lifter, who took up bodybuilding. But she's just amazing. And it's that kind of optical illusion is really what it takes to be that special. That's why she's winning everything, because nobody can stand next to her. She's bigger than they are. She's more aesthetic than they are. She's pretty. She has a nice personality. She poses well. Everybody likes her. That's the problem that Iris had, is that nobody liked Iris. Mm-hmm. And I saw several contests, several Olympias, in which they didn't even compare Iris to the top 5. They just left her off. And she was obviously one of the best. Because, I didn't like Iris any more than anyone else did, but I really appreciated her as a bodybuilder. And I thought she should score where she deserved to be scored, which eventually happened. But there were several contests that didn't happen. But that would not happen with Drea, because everybody likes Drea. And like everybody liked Linda. And of course, in a sport where you're dealing with people and officials and judges, being really well liked helps. Like everybody liked Lee Haney.
Yeah.
Lee Haney, easy going. I have a Lee Haney story.
Go ahead.
Joe Weider sent me to photograph him in Atlanta in his gym. Now, that was his second gym. I'd been to his first gym, which was not air conditioned. And I sweated through 3 T-shirts. And it was November. But it was a very humid November in Georgia. So I go back to shoot him in his new air-conditioned gym. And, of course, he's not sweating. So we used to have a spray bottle and spray some water in order to make it look like perspiration. But it's chilly in the gym. So he's really getting irritated with that. So he finally turns to me and says, "Bill, please don't spray me with no more water."
Oh God! Okay, this is, what? That's a good point. I remember a friend of mine. He competes. Big Keith Williams. He told me a story about Jay Cutler, and Jay back in the day, like a lot of the male bodybuilders, the way to make some money, they sell their clothes and stuff like that. Especially because good amount of male bodybuilders, they get a lot more following by guys who are come stop. So he told me the story how one day Jay took one of his shirts because he didn't. I think he forgot. I think he washed one of his shirts one day and it was still wet. So he said, "You know what? Let me send this guy a shirt." So he sent the shirt to Jay. Jay sent this guy the shirt. The guy gets the shirt. He smelled it. He said, "It doesn't smell like you." So what Jay had to do from now on is like, here were 2 or 3 shirts under his workout clothes, so he makes sure every time, because those guys can tell what he smells like, even when he sweats.
Well, women in general, models, actresses, whatever, who are promoting themselves, have always sold their clothing, especially their underwear. They would take off their underwear and put it in a plastic bag. And so they would get $100 for it or something. People, the thing about people, and the internet has sort of given us more insight into this. It is just weird what turns people on in general. What pulls the trigger. Like you go on porno sites And people have fetishes you never even heard of.
Yeah.
And subcategories of subcategories. But female bodybuilders and models and whatever have often sold their used clothing rather than, like you can go and probably Jay Cutler will sell you T-shirts that say Jay Cutler on it that are brand new, like that, and you can buy merchandise from other people. But I'm not surprised if many of the people sell stuff that they've worn, because that's happening in other industries as well.
Yeah, it's just, I was, like I said, like a lot of ladies, like I said, do OnlyFans because it's a way to make money. Because back in the day, there was, like I said again, unless you're the top level competitors, you're not going to make much money, even if you do photo sessions. And you have to, like one lady says, that you have to monetize yourself. You can't rely on anybody else but you. And the stuff like fetish is weird because I do content on MMA, and there was a while back, a few years ago, there was an MMA fighter, and she was UFC, and she defecated in her uniform during a fight, and there were people that wanted to buy that uniform. I mean, there were stories that she had guys as far as often $50,000 to buy the uniform she shitted in, and it's just some people have a fetishes.
That's what they invented the word fetish for. Fetish is all
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Our interest in female bodybuilding to be fetish,
mm-hmm.
and it is for a lot of guys, like a fetish. It isn't for me. I do not have some particular sexual thing for muscular women. I like a lot of them. A lot of them are very attractive, but a lot of the women I find attractive are not muscular. I like the aesthetics as a photographer of female muscle, and a male muscle too. That's the thing. Is I used to say to judge where they look at a female on stage, and boy, I'd really like to fuck her. And I go, which of the men do you want to fuck? If you're going to use that as a judging standard, which of the men are you interested in?
Yeah.
And in fact, in the earliest days of the NPC, before the NPC, when it was the physique committee of the
AAU?
The AAU.
Yeah, AAU, yeah.
There was a group of judges in place who were essentially gays who had interest in the male bodybuilders they were judging and looking for sexual favors and giving special treatment to the guys they were interested in. And Mannion and Company came in and cleared them out because it was a very corrupt system. So, that has not happened to my knowledge in the IFBB. I'm not saying no individual judge has ever been interested, but that's never been an institutional problem. But it was back in the AAU days. The thing about men and women is, somebody explained this, if there wasn't a natural, ingrained attraction, sexual attraction, mostly to women in men, the race wouldn't exist. Like for instance, if women could be dissuaded from having sex and having babies because of current events, then you might have had back in the day, hey, we can't bring a baby into this world. Attila the Hun and his bunch are just over the hill. Well, we can't bring a baby into the world that just invented the crossbow or the atomic bomb or the internet or whatever. There are certain ungovernable appetites. One is food to eat. Another is self-preservation. Another is sex. That's why people get in trouble with sex. They do really stupid things. Look at all the people now who are being fired from their jobs or prosecuted or sued because of sexual indiscretion. They take, what's his name, Weinstein. There was this guy who was one of the top producers in Hollywood, where he had starlets at his feet. All he had to do is go to a party where he's Joel Weinstein. It's full of starlets, and said, would you like to come have lunch with me? They're there. But he needed to go for some famous movie star who happened to be Brad Pitt's girlfriend, which was not a good idea.
Ooh.
And try and pressure them into sex because he wasn't really just interested in the sex. But the point is that he should have known better. And look at Bill Cosby.
Yeah.
Bill Cosby was so famous. If he goes to a party, if he goes to someplace, he doesn't have to hit on women who don't want him. Like I'll tell you, there was a bodybuilder that I knew. He's a guy, nothing racial here, but he was thick and round, and he looked kind of like a gorilla. He's not a good-looking guy at all. Nicest guy in the world, by the way, and a really good bodybuilder. He had wonderful calves, and his calf training was leaning up against the wall and doing toe races. That's it. That's all he did. And he would always be with a beautiful blonde. And again, this was not some really good-looking, it wasn't Sean Ray. It was this guy who looked kind of like a gorilla. And I found out how it worked. He would go up to women. He had absolutely no fear. He would go right up and get in their face and say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so." And he was so sort of impressive, intimidating, that they would sort of make up in their minds, yes or no, are they interested right away? Most women don't. Most women go maybe, and then you have to convince them. They go, well, maybe. They go no or maybe. Now, if you're a movie star or a famous bodybuilder, then they'll go no or yes. But most of us don't trigger that off. But Bill Cosby would, and this bodybuilder did. And he would just go up to one woman after another and get in her face and get her phone number and whatever. And he would out of 5 or 8 women he talked to, he'd just go after the one who showed interest. And that was the name. There's another guy who did the same sort of thing. I can't think of his name. It's from Orange County, a tall, lean, black bodybuilder. God, what's his name? I'm terrible at names. But he would go through an expo asking every woman that he was attracted to for their phone number. At the end of it, he'd have 20, 30 phone numbers. And again, he was a very impressive looking guy. He was a good looking guy, tall, lean, muscular, well-spoken. And he didn't come on too strong to them. He just talked to them. And in fact, I have given this advice because I'm so used to dealing with women and with impressive women. Guys have seen me where I'll just go up and start talking to them. How do you do that? What do you do? And I say, you don't do anything. You just go, hi, I'm so-and-so. What's your name? That's it. Just easy going.
That's the same thing, because I interviewed Sean Nelson, who also does photos like yourself, before we were in bodybuilding fitness. And Sean said the same thing. All you got to do, because pretty much most women can sense, because like I said, when I reach out and do interviews, I just tell them, just say, hey, how I doing? My name is George. I got a channel like that. And it's like this. You just throw a line. And if the woman likes the line and she feels like, okay, he's not too weird or too creepy, or because I say, well, I learned they really
just be there. And be prepared for the woman might have a negative reaction. That famous comedian who's dead now from Philadelphia. I met him, actually. I was on his radio show. Again, I do this with names. It's not Alzheimer's. I've always done it with names. But he would meet women anywhere, the supermarket, line in a movie, but he had no fear. he would just walk up and talk to them normally. Hi, I'm so-and-so, what's your name? Now, later he was famous, and of course that was different. But when he wasn't famous, it's just the same thing. He didn't cause them to have a negative reaction, so they would look at him and he'd get the yes and maybe. If you can get the yes and maybe. Now, again, if you're famous, if you're Arnold, you walk up to a woman and you get a yes or no right away. They react right away. They have to make up their minds. So this is when you see these bodybuilders who all have these great looking girlfriends and see some, that's what they do. They don't have to do anything. Their fame, or a famous movie star is doing it for them. For the rest of us, what we need to be is non-threatening. Nice and non-threatening.
Rolando G, yeah, I get tired of that though with women. They need to be more transparent. That's judgmental.
Well, that's the thing is women, they are who they're gonna be. And women usually go with a man that they feel comfortable with or they're attracted to. If they don't feel the same feelings with you, then there's nothing you can do about that. But if you keep going to the next woman like this.
There's a thing that I know because I live in a world of women. I photograph women. My assistants are women. My stylists. Okay. Women are hit on, especially attractive women, from the time they're in their middle late teens, and they have to defend themselves. If say a woman of 30, chances are she's been sexually abused at some point in her life. Maybe not raped, but maybe raped. Are just have to constantly be on the defensive. We don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
But I know when I was a young, good-looking teen guy, I had to be real careful dealing with guys because a certain number of them would be gays who were hitting on me, and I had to recognize them.
That happened to me too.
Or guys who just
That's why I'm laughing.
Nothing against it. I just had to recognize where it was coming from so I didn't do or say the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
Women do that all the time.
I gotta say a point because I worked over about 14, 15 years in textiles, and that's we're in that sew. And sometimes we between lunch breaks, you sit and talk and have conversations and tell you things. Also, I have another job. I used to work 6 years in a strip club, and there's nights where when they feel like they're comfortable with you, they'll tell you everything they feel like they need to tell you. But also they have to be, because you're in a situation where you have to deal with men, and we're not always at our more congenial behavior when we're in places like that. But yeah, I can say I've been trying to tell him that. Yeah, sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes you get a yes and a no.
People ask me all the time, since I shoot nudes of these women, they say, "Wow, does that give you access to them?" And I say, that's the last place that gives me access. Because in order to have them be comfortable, I have to create a feeling for them where they feel totally secure. They don't feel self-conscious at all. They can take off all their clothes and they're not worried. I say, I develop a demeanor almost like their gay hairdresser. Oh, you look fantastic. You look wonderful. You
look great, darling. You look lovely. Yeah.
No, I don't do that. I mean, just in terms of appreciating without being sexual about it. Mm-hmm. Oh, you look wonderful. You look fantastic. You're in great shape. Oh, that pose is terrific for you. Why don't you try this? You'd look good in this. Just where I'm being supportive of them. In fact, one time I was photographing a girl, and we had good photo session, got good photos. And we finished, put down the camera, and she went up to put her arms around me and realized she was naked. She went, oh, that's the first point. She realized she was naked because she was so comfortable in it, she had forgotten. Which I consider to be a success in the way I ran my, because I have shot hundreds and hundreds of these women nude, but you guys have never heard any criticism of me.
No.
But there were people who were enemies who were trying to hurt me. But in general,
haters.
That's why women are not the women are not reluctant to come over and work with me, or even go out in the desert where we just the two of us go out there. You know.
Yeah.
So you've been single all your life?
Not yet.
Oh,
I've had long term. I've lived with this one girl back in the 70s and early 80s for 5 years, and my girlfriend now I've known for 30 years.
That's nice. You know, this is what, because as I said, I make content and stuff like that, and I remember a while back I do these things called comparison videos where I compare different competitors like that. And I remember I did one about one of these ladies. She saw it because she has a YouTube channel, and she said, "You know what, George? I liked how you talked about us without being overly sexual. You talked about our physiques. You talked about our aesthetics. You didn't go too much in meaning about this and that in detail. You just talked about just pretty much, you know, what we were being judged on." And that's why I learned that, you know, if you make these ladies feel comfortable, like that's why I still, some of these ladies, I still have friendships with, like, you know, I still have good friendships with them. We you know, talk on the phone every now and then, talk on, you know, social media. Just made a video for a lady for a birthday. She liked it. And, you know, because, you know, I just put it together and just made it real nice.
you know,
Yeah, well,
I do.
I get a girl coming into the studio, dressed or not dressed, whatever. And I say, here's a beautiful girl who's been hit on her whole life, who always has to have her defenses up, never really knows if there's an ulterior motive for a guy. Oh, I can help you with that. Or I can drive you there. You know, that never knows. And the last thing I want to do is to give them any cause not to feel safe. So I say, I have dated some of these girls after we've worked, when I've gotten to know them for a long time, and we've become friends, but never during or close after a photo shoot. I don't want their defenses to be up.
I do. I mean, I have like mixed feelings about that. Like, I kind of understand where you coming from, but the same token, you know, a lot of these women, like women today, you know, they kind of like, I don't know if you guys gonna agree with me, but you know, they do kind of display themselves as sexual objects, whether female bodybuilder or not. You know, I even have women, you know, personally had told me that, you know, a lot of them, they want attention and stuff like that.
But
Well,
that's a put on
So,
the
I
woman.
mean,
there's an eye of the beholder thing. You know that old joke about the psychiatrist has a patient, he has these Rorschach blots. You know what they are, the ink blots.
Yeah.
You're supposed to interpret them. And he shows each one of them to the patient. The patient comes up with one more dirty, filthy interpretation, sexual interpretation after another. And the psychiatrist turns to him and says, "You really have a dirty mind." And the patient says, "Don't look
You're
at
the
me,
one showing the sort of pictures.
the dirty pictures."
Yeah, I heard of that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, like I said, this with women, and they have to be defensive, especially in a society where there's more advantage to being a man than to being to a woman. Women do have the luxury of their attractive. If they use that as a weapon, they can. They don't. But here's this, like I learned this, and this is one of my favorite quotes. You know, my master Ra's al Ghul taught me, always be aware of surroundings at all time, young Master Wei. And you know, and that's what it is. They have to be aware of surroundings when they go into a place, and especially if they're working with somebody like you. They have to be aware, okay, hey, I know this guy who follows with girls, and you know, and like that. So I'm wondering he's not gonna be too weird or creepy. But it's just that's something that I think we have to, as men, have to be aware of. And maybe we may not.
There's one thing though. In the world of female bodybuilding, I have almost never had a woman sort of come on to me for pictures. I remember one night getting a phone call just before the Olympia. I'd do anything to get in Muscle and Fitness. I had no idea who that was. When I'm dealing with mainstream models and strippers and people like that, that's different. They can be, well, you worked in a strip club. Mm-hmm. They can be very manipulative. You know, and anytime I've had anything like that happen, it's been some sort of mainstream model or stripper or porno girl or something, not a female muscle competitor. I've almost never had that happen. So again, it depends on who you're dealing with. Because obviously, because women can get things out of sexuality, including husbands, various ones of them will use that sexuality to get things at different times, sometimes very blatantly, sometimes subtly, sometimes ethically, sometimes not. So you just know that. But as a photographer, you try and keep that to the absolute minimum where like the women I shoot know I'll shoot them if they're right for the magazine. They don't have to give me anything. They just have to show up in shape. I don't want anything from them except their time. So, but again, I know a lot of Playboy photographers, and so I've heard all sorts of stories. And even they, when they were shooting, two of them I know in particular shot a lot for Playboy. They were very, very careful because the Hefner crowd didn't want them, fucking the models.
Right.
It's bad for the magazine. It's bad for the reputation. It's bad for getting new women to come in.
Bad for business.
Yeah. So they had some of the absolute most beautiful women in the world in there, and they were extremely careful in how they treated them because they were professionals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Rolando G, he says, yeah, and they manipulate us with their IGs, but then when you talk them regular, you're not coming on strong. They'll friend zone you real quick. That's what I don't understand.
That's probably any other woman. They feel like,
Well, I don't even know what that means. I know that when you deal with a lot of women, some of them are going to be one type, some are going to be another. They have their own
preference.
Background. They have their own damages. They have their own considerations. They may have two young children at home and trying to provide for. They may be badly damaged, maybe psychologically difficult.
I could agree on that. I could agree.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about female muscle and fit models, we're talking about a specific group, and they're more homogenous. They're more alike than another group would be because they have the same regimen, they have the same goals, they have the same lifestyles. So, everybody needs to protect themselves from everybody. You got to be careful who you're dealing with. But if you want to photograph women, then get good photographs of women one way or the other. Learn to shoot them, learn to process them, learn to display them in a portfolio, and go where there are women. Introduce yourself, have a business card, so-and-so photographer, with your email on it or whatever, and say, I'm a photographer. I'm looking for portfolio models because you're not offering them a job. Let me show you what I do and see if you'd be interested in posing for me. That's all. Mm-hmm. There's nothing very threatening about that. Mm-hmm. But like I say, if you have a woman companion, it makes it much easier. I've never needed that. I guess I've been doing this so long. I can walk up to women anywhere and just talk to them.
Mr. Dobbins, you're James Bond. You're James Bond. You come in and said, I like my martini shaken, not stirred. I think that really and especially your reputation, because you have a good reputation.
Yeah, but people know who I am when I walk up to them. But you know the movie, what's the name of the movie? Capone.
Scarface?
No, the movie
Untouchables.
Untouchables?
Untouchables, I guess.
Untouchables?
Yeah.
I guess. And so you have Sean Connery as a policeman. Okay, he's a policeman. And he's walking around. He runs into
Kevin Costner.
Kevin Costner, and he taps him with his baton, and he says, "Why are you carrying a gun?" And Costner says, "Well, I'm a federal agent." And Sean turns around and starts to walk away.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry.
Kevin says, "Why are you walking away?"
He says, "Why would you just believe me because I tell you?" And Connery looks back and he says, "Who would claim to be who was not?"
Yeah, that's a classic.
I ain't see that movie yet.
Yeah, it's a classic.
I think I seen like some part.
Is that part
No,
where
go ahead, go
Sean
ahead.
and Kevin Costner talking, and you say like you talk about you got a man, you're like he bring a knife, he bring a gun. Your man goes to the hospital, his man go to the morgue. Yeah, that's a classic. You know.
But I'm very specific. Hi, I'm photographer for Muscle Fitness and Flex Magazine. Blah blah blah. Here's my card. See, I have where do I have it? When you give someone your card, they'll have a tendency to look at it and just put it away. Hold on a minute, I can't get it in my pocket.
Kind of like my man the Joker says, "Here's my card. Let me introduce myself. This is my persona." When he pulls out the card in the part in Dark Knight, and he says, "Here's my card. Call me when you're ready."
Yeah, I don't know if that's exactly the way I'd like to introduce myself to people.
Yeah.
But you see,
Okay, let me ask you a simple question. How do you do the cards? Like do you do it in Photoshop or you go to fax?
This I did on Photoshop, but they have software for making cards. That's
okay. Yeah, that's right. Adobe. Yeah, you're right. Adobe.
What I did was, I have. Whoops. I have.
Yeah, Adobe something. I forgot.
So I have some physique. I have some modeling. So when I hand somebody to this, their normal reaction is, "Can I keep it?" They're not putting it away and not looking at it again and forgetting it. They're going, "Oh, because I've given them something of value." Okay. And so people say to me, "Can I keep this?" They're not thinking of throwing it away. They're thinking of keeping it. Mm-hmm. But again, I don't really use portfolio much, but I have a printed portfolio, and I have stuff on Photo Shelter. If you look at me on Photo Shelter, I've got 5 or 6 different gallery layouts of different kinds of work that I do. So like I'm on Facebook, I can put on my Photo Shelter links so that people know where to look at the different work that I do. And again, I have my photo. I've got 3 photo. One of the most beautiful women in the world. Now that's Andrea. Look at that.
It's like being both of them like two different
compared to Linda.
I mean, they're both beautiful women. They're both beautiful women. And I can't believe it.
Incredibly.
Mm-hmm. I think Andrea's like the Linda of this era, I would say.
Well,
and
one of the definitions of it. See, that's the other thing I do. That was strict. Those are homeless people around Gold's Gym. What was I saying?
I'm sorry, I threw you off.
I have 3 big groups on Facebook. The biggest one, has 30,000 members. And all told, I've got about 36,000 members. So I run them like magazines. And they're groups because I let other people post on them. I just have to okay the post. So if I have my fit and fabulous female photos of fit and fabulous females group, I will have other people post fit and fabulous females. I'll get to see women I didn't even know about, that I never would have thought of. It's just I have to look and make sure it's appropriate to the page or to the group. So that's interaction, but I don't make any money out of it that I'm aware of, except in occasionally that somebody will want to book me for a shoot because of something they saw on Facebook. But that's my portfolio nowadays. I don't walk around. I have that business card, but I don't have a portfolio. I walk around and show people. But if you're trying to develop a photography business or activity, first thing is get good at it. That means shooting thousands of pictures all the time. You don't have to keep them. You can throw them away. They're just digitally. You need some place to store them. A hard drive to put them on, and hopefully another hard drive to back them up on, because you don't want to lose them. But go out and shoot thousands of pictures and look at them and see which ones are good and which ones are bad. Look at thousands of pictures. I look at pictures all the time on Google or whatever. I prefer Bing. I like Bing images better than Google. I just like the layout better.
You never took like a class for like photography, or you just self-taught?
No, but if you go to you can go. Okay, photography class in the past was mostly about printing and developing, which you don't do anymore. I mean, I had my own darkroom. I did that, but if you go to LinkedIn Learning, they have classes in photography. They have classes in everything. They'll tell you how to use Lightroom, how to use Photoshop, how to do everything. I go on it all the time.
No, I mean, but like when you were starting out, you just like picked up the camera.
Yes, but in those days it was about exposure before you had exposure meters built into cameras. It was film and processing, which you don't have anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I did is, when I had a small library when I was in high school near me, and I had like 4 or 5 shelves of photography books. I checked every one of those out at some point. I read every book there was on photography available to me. As a matter of fact, here in Los Angeles, there's a photo company called Sammy's Camera. It's the B&H of Los Angeles. And they had a website, and I did 100 blog posts for their website on photography, photographers, and photo history. And I just went through from the invention of photography in 1830, and daguerreotypes and wet plates and dry plates and film, and then the Leica and the Rolleiflex and all of these things, small format cameras and big format cameras. And when magazines were able to start printing pictures, which they couldn't originally, they used illustrations. So I really immersed myself in the history of photography. So that's, you can never know too much. But go on, if you can just go on YouTube and get photography lessons.
Yeah, I usually do. I mean, I took some courses. I mean, I've learned certain things. I mean,
But
I could check it out though.
Mostly nowadays, it's about doing it, because you can shoot as many pictures if you want.
George, you gotta go, right?
It's just, gentlemen, because I live out here in North Carolina. I live the country, and it's about supper time for us here. But sir, I do appreciate this knowledge that you dropped.
Yeah, my dad used to be stationed at Fort Bragg.
Oh, Fort Bragg. Wow. I have my sister and my nephew. My sister visited me this afternoon. She lives up in Fayetteville. I have family up that way. Yeah, Bragg. I mean, it's Don't go. This is what I learned. Do not go to round brag on the 1st or the 15th. So yeah, they don't want to be, because that's when the soldiers get paid. But sir, I appreciate you.
Very
And
nice.
yeah, and you guys like you and Steve Winterstrom and Steve Shabelli and all these guys who really
Winterstrom has kind of disappeared. Winterstrom has kind of disappeared.
Well, yeah. Whoa.
Was having a trouble because I tried to get Jake to hire him, but Jake's former wife didn't like him, and he never hired him because I tell Jake I've got thousands of photos here where I can't ID them, and Winterstrom could.
Mm-hmm.
But he was working like as a greeter at Walmart or something for a long time, and then he moved away from California. I don't know where he is.
Yeah, I remember he was married to Leo back in the day, and I think they got divorced like about 20, 30 years ago, I believe. But yeah, him and you and all the other guys who really gave women bodybuilding an opportunity that most other people wouldn't give to. And for me, is it coming up, seeing y'all, reading the old World Physique magazines, seeing your stuff and stuff, and
Steve was for women's bodybuilding in the beginning.
Yeah, but I do appreciate, sir. And I really like. This is great knowledge. I hope my man here is getting it because he needs to get it. And I wish you all the best. All I can say. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for coming.
All right. Thanks. I said, yeah, boy. I said, and I said, thank you for being of particular education for a particular criminal like myself.
You better off doing that with the women, man. Please.
I had to look into it. I had to drop them on you.
The Joel Raise Yours page, folks.
Yeah, I don't think I approach women with that identity.
He does it all the time in his live stream. Some of them, they like it. Some of them don't.
I'm talking about in terms of what we're talking about. The more non-threatening you can be, the better.
Yeah. I mean, Mr. Dobbins, do you have your website still up to join?
Okay. I have this problem. BillDobbins.com and BillDobbins.net are huge websites.
Yeah.
But there's some problem with the code. I think I put a password protection on it some time ago, and that's obsolete, and it doesn't let people join. Some people join, but most people can't join. I've been going back and forth trying to find someone to fix the code, but at the moment, the best way to interact with me is through my Facebook groups, photos of fit and fabulous females.
Yeah, years back, I did join your Facebook group, but I don't be on Facebook that much. But I used to kind of post stuff. I remember one time I posted Wonder Woman, and you was telling me, I appreciate you posting stuff, but post female bodybuilders at least. I had a thing for Wonder Woman, man. That.
I don't remember it. I do try to.
It was a while back. It was a while back. It was a while back.
I do try to curate the site so that it has a coherency and an identity. For instance, there's this girl that's posting. She's in Florida, but I think she's Israeli. Bakar, her name is. She has tremendous legs and tattoos on her arm. And she's just incredible. But she keeps posting things where she's trying to sell something. And I keep telling her, listen, anything you post with a picture of you, that if you sell something on the side, that's fine, but we have to see a picture of you. Right. And again, when people post photos just they got off Google, and I don't know who they are, I won't put them on. I say, you have to ID the model because she deserves to get credit. Anybody can go on Google and type in female muscle. Right. That's not curated. It's not edited. It's just random. And why should I try and do what Google does? So there are lots of places, but usually when I have other places to see my photos, I post them on Facebook so that I give links.
Yeah. I think let me see. He had a comment. He said, "Yeah, Mr. Dobbins is right. And to be honest, there is Brazilian men and women have their bodybuilder aesthetics are incredible."
Well, Brazil is one of those melting pot countries that has a lot of different ethnicities. Uh, and they have some of the most beautiful people on earth.
Yeah.
You, you look at the women who are in Carnival. I'll tell you the truth, even their transsexuals are the most beautiful on earth,
Mm.
except maybe for some Asians. Brazilians are just beautiful. You look at
Yeah,
supermodels.
they have this
And
exotic look for some reason.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, part of it is because uh, countries that have more of an ethnic diversity, they have a bigger sort of DNA pool to draw on.
Right.
This is what's wrong. You get a country like Japan. There are a lot of beautiful Japanese, but they're all beautiful the same way
Right.
because they have a very narrow genetic pool.
Right.
Uh, whereas in the United States, you have everything.
Yeah.
So someone said, if I go to China and become a citizen, that makes me a Chinese citizen, but it doesn't make me Chinese. But if someone from China comes here and becomes a citizen, they become an American. We're unique almost in being that kind of
Yeah.
country.
Yeah. He also says the reason why I say female bodybuilders should not go adult because they lose their appeal after a while.
Well, that's a subjective point of view.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, my problem is I look at a lot of porno pictures of female muscle, and they're just not very good.
Yeah.
It's not very attractive. Um, there are some exceptions, but uh, it's just you know, an assistant of mine once said that what's good about my bodies in the landscape photos is that they would be good landscape photos if the body wasn't there.
Mm.
And so if you're going to do a porno picture of a female bodybuilder, female with muscle, it should be a good picture, even if you couldn't see anything sexual about it. Because if you couldn't see
Yeah.
genitals or you couldn't see whatever, it still should still be a good picture. And uh, I remember hearing a stripper who said she hated working in all nude places as opposed to topless places, because she says in all nude places the guys in the audience are only looking one place, and it's very hard to establish a relationship with them that gets them to buy a dance.
Mm.
Whereas when it's topless, they're sort of topless, they're sort of looking at the whole woman as a person, and then they're more likely to come and buy a dance. So that's the problem, is when you have pictures where genitals show, men or women, that tends to be the focus of attention.
Yeah. Yeah. After a while, it do turn you off. I mean, my thing is, I like looking at like exotic wrestling and stuff. That's the only porno I go
Just
far as.
as soon as you say I, you're talking about yourself, your taste, your point of
Yeah.
view.
Right.
There's them too. There's these other people who just don't see things the way we do.
Right.
So it's like, I don't like liver. I've tried liver a lot and I don't like it. There are people who love liver. Am I saying they're wrong? No, I'm saying I don't like liver.
Right.
Like, for instance, uh, I don't like coconut flavor and things. Lots of people love it. I don't tell them not to like it. You know, I just know what I like, but I know that what I'm talking about is my own taste. Now, the thing about bodies, here's something about bodies. There is somebody who likes any kind of body who's turned on by it. Big, small, super fat, super skinny, doesn't matter. There's somebody out there. But the more extreme a body gets, the more away from the norm, the fewer people like it. But the more you have people who like the norm, the more they like it.
Right.
To say, if they really like it, if there's a guy who is turned on by obese women, he's in a vast minority, but he really, really likes that in favor of anything else. And all the things that turn us on just wouldn't affect him. It wouldn't turn him on. The idea of muscular women has taken hold. It's become more common since the 1970s. And you can tell because you can tell how fit models and actresses are nowadays. But when you're coming to an Andrea Shaw, there are still a lot of people who just consider them to be freaks.
Yeah.
And they might like an aesthetic girl, one of the figure women, because they're not that extreme.
Right.
Okay. In the same way that they'll like a male actor who's got a physique, but well, of course you can't really say that. And at times since Arnold, they really do like big muscles. Yep. Yeah, Arnold and Jean-Claude and people have introduced big muscles so that now the public likes them on men, but not on women yet.
Right.
By the
You
way,
think
there is only
you,
one action star that doesn't have a physique.
and who's this?
Bruce Willis.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, that's
Right.
right.
Like I said, I can't be an action star because my name isn't Chris. You look
Right.
at Chris Worth and Chris, they have all these Chris's. But action stars nowadays all have some degree of physique. The new Jack Reacher, all of that, and of course, that doesn't it doesn't apply to women except in rare exceptions, like a
Yeah.
Marshall.
Would you think that they'll ever have a woman like to showcase like a Andrea Shaw like in a big screen, or is it not gonna happen?
It won't happen with an Andrea Shaw or something like that. It will
Right.
happen with a really good female bodybuilder who actually really can act.
Right.
If you look at a lot of the guys like The Rock or several other very physical movie stars, Jean-Claude, they're not great actors, but they could act well enough to be in an action movie. Going way back to Jim Brown, again,
Yeah.
where they're a physical presence on stage. They're not so much acting. Although Jim Brown was a good action actor. He could play, or
Dirty Dozen. I remember the Dirty Dozen, and
or what's his name? Chuck Norris.
man, I wasn't a
Okay.
Chuck Norris fan too much.
He made some pretty good action movies.
Yeah, but I don't know. He just didn't never really like stood out for me. I don't know for
Well,
some reason.
I have the best physique shot of Chuck Norris ever shot.
Yeah, I think with Bruce Lee, get that. I don't know for some reason. I kind of liked. I think he got beat up by the end, but I think I gotta give him his props. I mean, he was a good martial artist. I liked him in Missing in Action, the Missing in Action,
Bruce Lee, of
action
course,
movies.
Bruce Lee, of course, was a very special personality. He just really was
Yeah,
unique. Chuck
right,
Norris was a real fighter. He was trained in Korea where they don't pull any punches.
right,
When they're training you for karate in Korea, they beat you up. And he
yeah,
went in full contact karate and won. So he was not somebody who gave exhibitions. He's a real fighter.
yeah,
Um, there are a few others who are real fighters. Jean Claude was not. He
right.
could do it, but he was not. But uh, what's his name? Rocky Four. The big
Sylvester Dolph Lundgren.
Dolph Lundgren. Dolph Lundgren was a full contact karate guy.
Oh, I didn't
He was
know that.
6'5" and could kick up over his head.
Mm,
No one wanted to get in the ring with him. So when they had competitions, he was in Australia, they would have to not announce he was in the contest because all the super heavyweights would leave because no
yeah,
one wanted to face him. Now, I have photographed him kicking a heavy bag and he's kicking up over his head like that. Whack! He's a really big, athletic guy.
mm,
Uh, and, that's what's funny when he's in a movie with Sylvester Stallone, who trained for boxing but was never a boxer. And Lundgren really was a fighter. But, a lot of the guys who play boxers are not boxers. They just
yeah,
trained boxers. And
right,
Stallone, wonderful job of looking like a boxer, but I don't think he ever had a real fight.
yeah. I think I have to go, Mr. Dobbins, but I really do appreciate you as spending the time with me and you know, giving me all these advices. I appreciate that. So
Well, it's good to talk to you, and I'm glad to see promotion being done for both the men and the women.
yeah. Any departing words for the viewers out there or anything like that?
Uh, well, the best place to look for me is on Facebook. I have several groups. The main one being Photos of Fit and Fabulous Females, which has got 30,000 members. So there's a lot of people, but it's mostly for women, but it'll link you to the stuff I do for men as well.
Okay. Yeah, I want
And
to. Not
and
go
just
ahead. I'm sorry.
I also still take bookings. If there's anyone out there, I'm in Los Angeles, anyone out who wants to hire me to shoot photos or video, I'm here.
Okay. Well, I want to thank Rolando G for the comments and all the Race George page for stopping by. That's it. I mean, I hope you guys have a nice July 4th if you into that stuff. So I'm out.
Okay, take care. Nice to talk to you.